Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. If it's Tuesday, I guess it must be Pablo Torre. Pablo, welcome.
Jen, thank you for the flexibility. Tuesdays are a strange meeting for us, but I'm glad to be here
Yes.
nonetheless.
Well, we'll just have to catch up on more since we've had another day of sports under our belt.
Yes.
Let me start with really a tragedy. The shooting and the murder of really a beloved football coach who is featured on the Netflix program Last Chance U, which is really this, if you haven't seen it, folks, it is this gripping multi-part and talks about how they intervene in really kind of hard luck cases and kids who really it is their last chance. And it's a combination of coaching and career guidance and sometimes parenting. And this coach was tragically murdered. Talk to us a little bit about kind of the program and meaning the Last Chance You program and about this particular shooting and why it maybe tells us a little something about kind of what lurks on the periphery of football.
Yeah, so the coach's name is John Beam, and he is somebody who, of course, in Last Chance you get to meet. And sports has this way, by the way, of taking essentially like police blotter stories and
Yeah.
make you really care about the three-dimensionality of
Yes.
both who the victim was, but also the impact that he left. And a coach, I am my most sentimental about sports when it comes to the impacts that individuals can have on young people. And so
Yes.
John Beam, the quote here is that he is the best of Oakland. And Oakland, of course, is a place that has in sports a rich history that is shaped by its poverty, by its violence. Oakland is not merely a sports story, it's also, of course, a case study in America and race relations and all of these things. And so the shooting death of John Beam, as gruesome as it was, I mean, and the details are just as gruesome as you can imagine. Um, what happens is that it's an excuse for us to talk about the work that John Beam did as a coach that was captured again on this show, but also beyond, in ways that are, you know, let's just call them mundane. The actual hard work of being a school administrator. He was the athletic director as well as the coach, somebody who devoted his life to helping young people in Oakland. And this is a team, by the way, that was famed because of Coach Beam as having trying and succeeding at forging like actual deep relationships with players. And the thing I'll applaud when it comes to the larger scope of what is sports like as the money and the business of sports continues to march on. What you have is in this case study in Oakland with Coach John Beam, an example of what if we actually took the human side of this and really decided to make that our calling card. And sports can feel like a meat factory. Football, especially, can feel like a meat factory. So anybody who takes, frankly, disadvantaged kids in a place like Oakland and turns them into a success story, not just as a matter of, wow, they became good athletes, but wow, they became people
Yeah.
that we are proud of. It's one of the special things that sports can do.
Absolutely. One thing that struck me, not only about this coach, but other coaches that they've looked in, is that they really believe in the adage that you're better than the worst thing you ever did. There's an ability that these coaches have to see through very flawed young men, and we're all flawed, obviously, who have gotten off the wrong track and be able to touch them in a fundamental way that overlooks a lot, that overlooks gaps in race, in age, in all sorts of things. And it does seem that when you coach people at that level, you get the most out of sports than if you're coaching people who are already champions, who are already multimillionaires. And that always really kind of touched me about him and this program and the work it takes to bring something and to rescue these people who have had really horrendous life stories in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, look, the incentives for why you would care. I mean, sports is full of people from really hard backgrounds, and the incentives for caring for those people, you start with the premise of they are valuable to the business and the success of the teams that we root for and care about. Um, Youth sports at this level is in the story of Last Chance U, it's just clearly not what they're there for. They're not
Right.
here first and foremost to make NFL prospects, although that is
Yes.
certainly, the pot of gold at the end of every rainbow. It's the thing that keeps kids on some level entranced by sports, is the possibility that it transports you well beyond a place, like an inner city Oakland neighborhood. But what they did here, in terms of forgiveness, rehabilitation, the question of how do you integrate somebody who seems like they would otherwise be lost into a community in which they have value, in which people are literally cheering for them. That's sports. Sports is both the metaphor, as we often say in these conversations, it's the metaphor for the thing, but also the actual thing. And that is the legacy of a guy like John Bean.
And as you were speaking, I was thinking, the best analogy is men and women of the cloth of faith. They go out and they save souls, and they look at the whole person and they rehabilitate the whole person. That's in some sense what's so compelling. I also love these programs because they show it takes a couple, it takes a family, that it's such a commitment. These people are not making big bucks, to put it mildly, and that it takes such a sacrifice, that it's the wife, that it's the kids, that it's the neighborhood. And that sense of kind of community, I think, is also something that sports offers, the ability to be a fan with other folks who you might not have anything else in common with.
Well, listen, when you have I mean, again, a junior college as this, like, just to bring people into what a JUCO is, this is a way
Yeah,
station for troubled prospects. Let's
yes.
just let's just be very clear about what a junior college is in the ecosystem of like big time college sports. Um, those men in these positions of authority and power, um, what is so remarkable about someone like John Beam is that there are so many examples of people having that authority and power and abusing it. And
Yes.
so when there is
Yes.
somebody who actually uses it as a way, as a force multiplier for effectively uh, positive contributions for this community, it's just you just have to be almost you got to be out of your we should all go out of our way to celebrate sincerely what that is, because frankly the economic incentives are not there.
Right.
And
Right.
that's why
And
the show of it was meaningful, was because it gave
exactly.
this as an example to follow.
And it was a brilliant conception. Who would have thought you would become so invested in these junior colleges? Oakland is a big city, at least. Some of these that were featured were little towns, in red rural America or in places that most of us, have never been to. From the sublime to the awful, it seems that the Lakers, or at least some segment of the Lakers, may be engaged in one of these betting problems. The federal investigation is churning on. What do you know about this, and what should this tell us about the potential that this really metastasizes to many, many teams?
Yeah, so the headline here in the last several days has been that the NBA has reopened its investigation effectively, or rather, I should be fair to them. They continue their investigation, and they are looking specifically now into the Los Angeles Lakers. And so, as someone who has been steeped in the study of these indictments, the Lakers already were a character here. LeBron James was anonymized as a player whose
Right,
injury, or rather, whose likelihood of playing in a specific game was information that allegedly was transacted upon.
right,
Damon Jones, one of the men who was in fact indicted in this story, he is somebody who was working effectively for LeBron James, meaning he was around the Lakers as this strange. hybrid, de facto, not officially employed, but de facto volunteer assistant coach who was
Yes,
around the team and clearly a close friend of LeBron's, and someone who is
exactly.
connected to all the other unsavory characters allegedly in this story. And so the question of the Lakers, I mean, when you look at who has been named as defendants in these federal indictments, Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones, very notably, are both close friends of LeBron James. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean that that is so? These are the questions that I believe the NBA is now, I think, due to public scrutiny as much as anything else. This is the through line here. Public scrutiny motivating, animating a new look at the Lakers. Um, I think that's what we're seeing. As always, my default position is cynicism. This is something
Yes.
to cover the ask of a league as opposed to trying to get to the bottom of something here. Puns intended all the way around there. But yes, it is not new, but it is notable that the NBA would make sure that this in particular was being investigated.
And when you're talking about the Lakers, you're talking about one of the iconic teams, obviously, in the league. They just had an evaluation not too long ago of like $10 billion
Yeah,
or
just
whatever it
sold at a
was.
$10 billion valuation. Yeah.
So we're talking that this scandal particularly in particular may go really to the heart of the game. So let's move to the other scandal that Pablo has been all over, and that is the Kawhi Leonard story. The Washington Post has finally caught up to Pablo. Sooner or later, everybody catches up to Pablo. It just takes time. And they came out with a big story. What did you learn from the Post? And what have they been able to make of the tea leaves that you've exposed to the world?
Yeah, as always, my message to every journalistic entity in sports and news is the water's warm on this story. I encourage everybody to jump in the pool. I am welcoming of people who are doing work that gets new information out there because my only goal here, as always, is to make sure that my overworked staff can see our sort of direction here taken seriously. And so the Washington Post put resources towards studying Uncle Dennis Robertson in particular. And this is Kawhi Leonard's uncle, the guy who was the shadowy figure asking for and negotiating these side deals allegedly that were investigated in 2019 when Kawhi went to the Clippers over the Lakers, and they're now again being brought back with my reporting into Aspiration, which is of course the tree planting blah 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 company that went
Yes.
bankrupt in 2021. The thing that I found the most interesting here is that they got a bunch of so there are legal cases winding their way through Los Angeles. And
Right.
they're fascinating because they are people who are suing the Clippers because they allege they were promised financial compensation in exchange for their ability to bring Kawhi Leonard to the team. And so one of these texts that were sent in allegedly the course of one of these secret side deals, the Post got their hands on, and there was a Steve Ballmer deposition. But I'll give you the one that I just thought was very interesting, which is that there was a text message exchange between Uncle Dennis Robertson and one of these plaintiffs, who is a friend, an old teammate of Uncle Dennis, and the friend, a guy by the name of Wilkes says he talked to Jerry West, and this is going to get convoluted, but Jerry West was working for the Clippers, one of the great basketball players of all time, was working for the Clippers as an executive to recruit Kawhi Leonard. And there's a text message exchange about a three-way call that was had about a proposal for, quote, Ballmer to fund the Kawhi marketing campaign, end quote. And of course, there are denials on all sides. One of the guys, the third leg of that chain says, the call never took place. The Washington Post then brings that person text messages that he had sent about the call. And then the guy says, I didn't recall that exchange. The Clippers declined to comment. My point being that when you open the closet doors of the Los Angeles Clippers dating back to 2019 around Kawhi Leonard, there are lots of alleged skeletons there waiting for you to discover. And
Right.
actively discussed was how can we get a marketing deal for Kawhi Leonard that Steve Ballmer would pay for? And so, as somebody who reported the marketing deal that I allege Steve Ballmer did pay for via investment and aspiration, it just gives substantiation to the idea that this was always a goal. And there are, in fact, contemporaneous texts from 2019, apparently, to point to that.
And this, of course, is all premised on Steve Ballmer's denial that he had anything to do with any mechanism that was going to avoid the salary cap. That seems now to be an unsustainable position. Really, the question is, at what level of detail did he know, and how far this goes? But the notion that he was somehow at arm's length from all this, that he wasn't trying to work out a way for Kawhi Leonard to get more money, that doesn't seem like that's a sustainable position anymore.
And none of it seems very sustainable to me, frankly. But I will say the question is going to be if Kawhi had this deal and the deal was benefiting aspiration in terms of them claiming we have
Right.
Steve Ballmer's money, and it benefited the Clippers in terms of Kawhi needing this thing that he was demanding and them finally getting it to him such that he was a happy employee with this team. Um, how could Steve Ballmer not be aware? And there's another text in
Yes.
this reporting, by the way, that was interesting because what you realize is that in the recruitment of Kawhi Leonard in 2019, Steve Ballmer was getting direct updates, personally,
Yes.
text messages about how it was going, which is all to say that Steve Ballmer is not some abstract, faraway character. He was on top of this whole recruitment. In fact, I am separately told through my own reporting that he was personally invested and personally monitoring and personally demanding to be involved in the conversations with Kawhi directly, which is all to say that when it comes to what did he know and not know, he clearly wanted to know, I would say, a lot more than any standard NBA owner typically does when it comes to how
Correct.
you're trying to go get a superstar.
Correct. And I think that ultimately is where you started, which is it's hard to believe someone like Steve Ballmer would not know what's going on in his own organization. And the more we learn, the more that seems to be the case. So once again, common sense really does merge with fact, and that's the essence of good journalism. Let's end with, depending upon your perspective, either a sad story or a refreshing changing of the guard. And that
Mm,
is the Kansas City Chiefs, who look miserable this year. They're like, they lost 5 games already. I mean, this is not what you would expect of a two-time champion. And to his credit, Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback, has kind of said, a lot of this is on me. So I guess we come back to how do you go from being a two-time Super Bowl champ to really risking not making the playoffs or certainly not winning the division?
yeah, it is truly the story of two different teams when you think about the Super Bowl matchup of the
Yeah.
Eagles versus the Chiefs. The Eagles are doing the thing that the Chiefs are not. The Eagles are winning really close games.
Yes.
They are over and over again, seemingly every week, winning by the skin of their teeth. And the Chiefs are doing the opposite. The Chiefs are winless in one score games. I think they're 0 5 this season. And the whole magic of Mahomes has been by the end of the game, he's going to make sure that you guys emerge infuriatingly as a winner yet again. That's the
Yeah.
story of the Chiefs in every postseason. And so the question I have is whether November, we're talking November 18th, whether November 18th is too soon to say that something is amiss with how this magic trick is going to end. Because this season, Jen, the story for those who haven't paid attention to the NFL this season has been it is a deeply mediocre pileup of teams. The
Yes.
Eagles, I would say, are number one, and there's a steep drop off to a bunch of other stuff. And one of those teams, by the way, is the Broncos that just beat the Chiefs. The Broncos
Yes.
stay atop the AFC West. They look very good. But the Chiefs at 5-5, it's interesting. I don't think that we should just defer all of our wisdom and knowledge to gambling lines. But if you look at what the odds are still today for who's going to win the Super Bowl, the Chiefs are still a top five team. And that's simply because we're looking at a mediocre pileup of teams. And if the Chiefs sneak into the playoffs and they get to turn it on as the great dynasties do, then suddenly would any of us be surprised if the Chiefs were again in the Super Bowl? I would not be. But at the moment, it is absolutely earned to say this Chiefs team is not, I mean, they're getting beaten in ways that are dispiriting to anybody who has a long Kansas City kind of stock picking strategy.
And we have to remember last season, their regular season wasn't that great either.
No,
It wasn't as bad as it is now, but they didn't look great. They kind of stumbled their way into the playoffs. And then, to everybody's surprise, well, maybe not surprise, but once again, they came
to our
out on top.
chagrin. Yes, to our
Yes, exactly.
chagrin. Yeah.
And, I think that's kind of the frustration with the season, which is, you know, you look at the Buffalo Bills. Eh, yes, the Broncos, but are they really going to do it? You're
Mm,
right. I think that the Eagles have come closest, but there's not a single team that's only lost one game. The closest we've come is, two-game losers. So
yep.
it's not a display of football excellence that we're seeing really from any quarter. Now, I do want to talk about excellence, and it comes from one of my favorite sports, and that is tennis. We had
Mm,
the ATP tournament for the end of the season, which, for those of you who don't know, they basically take the top 8 players and they send them to a really fun kind of round robin tournament. And then you nation round and you get to the finals. It's all played indoors. So it has a very different look and different feel than a lot of tennis matches, but you sort of have to do it because you're playing in November. So the final in this case came down to, shocker, I know, but Yannick Sinner and Alcaraz. And the two of them play at a level that says they're playing some other game. They are just so far above the rest of the pack. It's kind of like the opposite of the NFL. You have
mm.
these two kind of peak athletes who make shots that are not just defensive, but from unbelievable positions, winner after winner. And what's more, one has a setback, and you think, okay, Sinner's finally kind of fallen behind Alcaraz, and he had, his losses this year. But suddenly he wins 7-6, 7-5. It was straight sets, but unbelievably close. But you know what I love the best, Pablo, is at the end, these guys are really like so respect for one another that they really embrace, not in this kind of phony, like, okay, nice going guy, but kind of this mutual respect. And this is turning into one of the great rivalries in sports. And these guys are young, they're in their 20s. This could go on for another 15 years. And it really is something to behold. And they're two nice guys who play by the rules, more or less. And had a little problem with the
Yep.
yes, the drug issue, but he paid his price. And now you just have these two guys, which just play tennis at a level I've never seen before. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
There's a term from boxing that I think about in all sports, which is that styles make fights. And it's
Yeah,
not just to have two guys who are very good. It's also to have two characters that are juxtaposed against each other and are more interesting because of the contrast.
exactly,
And
exactly.
Alcaraz as the whatever I think of him, he is emotional. He is Spanish. He is just like coiled athleticism, but like more compact. And he's ridiculous when it comes to just like the number of things you can see him do on a court. You're just
Right.
like, this is a virtuoso in terms of like
Yes.
creativity.
Yes.
And Sinner, by virtue of the contrast, is somebody who is restrained and disciplined and calm and lanky and this sort of just like again and none of those are meant to be disparaging, but as a matter of who feels synthetic and robotic and therefore impressive, you have that archetype as well, contrasted against the sort of like the red hot energy, the kinetic sort of like activity of Alcaraz. So it's just fun. I mean, every sport wants to have the confidence that, oh, we've solved our problem for the next 20 years already. And
Right.
tennis, men's tennis has. It's really a special thing to not take for
It
granted.
has. And we're coming off the most esteemed period of tennis where you had these three superstars, and everyone was sitting around wondering, okay, what do you do now that you don't have these three guys? And suddenly two guys pick up. And to carry your point, I think of Alcaraz as a jazz artist, constantly improvising, doing spectacular things. And Sinner is sort of the Bach. Everything is precise. It is, you can see the wheels turning, you can see each point being set up with perfect precision, and then boom, out of nowhere comes, a winning shot. So it is something spectacular to behold. So, we've had it all this week, Pablo. I guess sports really does have it all sometimes. But my heart still goes back to Beam and to his family and his students, and really to that whole team and group of young men who are hanging on by their fingernails, and the importance of people who care about them. And that's a great thing to remember, that people do matter.
Yes. Yes. Sports is, we always, I enjoy following the money in sports. But a sort of corollary to that is to not forget those who aren't quite in the pipeline.
Exactly.
And that's where the story of John Beeman, Last Chance U, and their season with this team in Oakland was meaningful, and I hope it is remembered because we need caretakers for people who aren't there to make you money, but to make hopefully our society marginally better in whatever way we can through sports, and that seems to be exactly what this guy's legacy should and will be.
Absolutely. Well, have a great rest of the week, Pablo. We will be back next week before the smorgasbord of sports that happens over the Thanksgiving weekend, which has become one of these like sports, bonanzas.
Yes.
And we will be back before then. So have a great week, and thanks for coming again. We always have a great time. Take
Yep.
care.
See you next time.
Bye.